Alright folks, it's story time. The story opens in Dark Castle where the Demon King summons his elite generals known as the Big Four. The first one is a red-haired girl called the Inferno Assailant, Umandra. The next general is Genome, who specializes in earth magic, while the third member is the Archmage of Storm, Sylphid, who looks like a dirty diaper. The Demon King then summons the fourth general, saying he's from another world, and he goes on about the greatness of his newly appointed general. After the longest yap session, he calls forth the almighty Denosuke Uchimura, the overseas manager? What? We then skip to the past life of Denosuke, where he is a 9-to-5 worker who works at a corporate firm. He keeps trying his hardest to climb the corporate ranks, but his superiors treat him worse than the office furniture. One day, his years of brute slurping, toes sucking, and ass-kissing loyalty is finally rewarded by sending him far, far away. With no choice left, he moves there and begins working overseas, but he quickly realizes the employees here aren't doing shit, so he tells his boss they need more support, but his request gets rejected right away. He starts losing hope, but he decides to hang in there, and after a while, he notices the workers are starting to follow his lead. He's thrilled to see this, and things finally begin to improve. The man turned this place from a goon cave into a real functioning office. What could possibly go wrong now? His boss suddenly calls him and reassign him yet to another country. At this point, it's clear Denosuke isn't just treated worse than office furniture, he is the office furniture. He falls into despair, realizing he's basically become a corporate slave, and right as he's contemplating the meaning of life, an old lady descends from the heavens and sends him flying with her bike. We then cut back to the Dark Castle, where Denosuke is shitting in his pant thinking he is in hell. The Demon King greets him, saying he wants him to serve as his general, but Denosuke only becomes more confused. So, the Demon King reveals that he knows everything about him, telling Denosuke he's a perfect fit for the demon army because he was such an excellent employee. And Denosuke, bless his heart, is shocked because it's the first time someone has appreciated him without immediately shipping him overseas. The Demon King then goes on about how much he'll be paid, and that he'll even get his own office, where everyone will treat him as the boss. So, Denosuke realizes the offer is basically too good to turn down, and the Demon King even says he'll send him back to his world if he's not interested. So Denosuke notes that the Demon King is actually a pretty chill guy, but he remembers how his former bosses never valued his efforts, and he says he's not worthy of such a position. But the Demon King tells him to forget everything those superiors ever said because they were all idiots. He knows Denosuke is diligent because he watched him work overseas, and he promises to help him reach his full potential. He even hits him with the classic, "I believe in you," which Denosuke has never heard from anyone except maybe his dentist. Denosuke is about to decide, but Umandra suddenly cuts in with her plastic breast, insisting he doesn't have what it takes to be one of the Big Four, and the others agree with her. So, the Demon King decides to test his abilities, and Denosuke panics since he doesn't know how to fight at all. But Umandra thinks he has some hidden power, so she tells him to defend himself as she launches a kick at him. Denosuke stands there thinking how f***ed he is as a meteor-like kick approaches him. But the Demon King shields him, saying he passed out because of the shock, so everyone realizes he's literally just a normal human. The Demon King admits it's true, but still insists Denosuke belongs in the Big Four, though Umandra finds that unacceptable. Gino mentions that the demon army is full of monsters, and they're constantly fighting the demi-humans, so she doubts Denosuke would last a single day. But the Demon King explains that he values Denosuke's intelligence and resourcefulness. Denosuke suddenly wakes up, only to panic again because he nearly died from Umandra's death kick. But the Demon King tells him to relax, saying he's chosen the perfect test for him. He explains that the demon army is trying to create alliances with other races, but they're struggling to negotiate with the minotaurs. He tells Denosuke that his test is to handle the negotiations and convince the minotaurs to join the demon army, but Denosuke freaks out, knowing that's an insanely difficult task. After that, Umandra brings him to the Minotaur chief, but she's certain he'll fail, and he thinks she's right since there's nothing special about him. But he remembers that the Demon King believes in him, so he decides to try his best anyway. He stands before a huge-ass gate, and Umandra tells him that Minotaur Chief is inside and he's about to meet the Minotaur Chief. But Umandra warns him that Minotaurs are brutal, so he needs to be careful if he doesn't want to die. Denosuke is determined to face whatever he sees until the door opens and all that bravado goes down the drain. He sees the Minotaur Chief named Terius, and he shits his pants again, realizing it could stomp him to death instantly. He thinks he isn't capable of handling the negotiation, so Umandra tries to help him and starts talking to Terius. But she only lasts 1 minute with the giant Minotaur and gets frustrated, and they both start cursing each other, wishing each other death, and Denosuke notices how ass her negotiation skills are. They leave Terius in his room, and she tells Denosuke that the Minotaurs were excited to join the demon army. But whenever she talks to Terius, he keeps refusing, and he even threw trash all over his room, so she thinks something's wrong with him. She tells Denosuke to handle everything. She walks away, Leaving Denosuke to handle the negotiations on his own, Denosuke starts wandering through the hallway, wondering how he's supposed to talk to Tyrius. He imagines himself drinking at a bar as he thinks about his next move. This bar seems to be his version of domain expansion. He recalls the moment when he negotiated with a foreign client, who kept refusing every offer he made. And the whole situation felt hopeless, so he nearly gave up, but he eventually managed to get the man to change his mind. He leaves the bar and returns to the hallway, saying he has an idea. Umandra reports to the Demon King, telling him Tyrius won't budge and she's convinced Denosuke will fail, but the Demon King says they should wait and see. She goes back to Denosuke, who is gathering straw, and asks what is he doing. He tells her he's going to talk to Tyrius, and she says there's no way to negotiate with him, but Denosuke says they shouldn't give up so fast. He believes the negotiation is failing because of a cognitive gap, so they need to earn Tyrius's trust. He tells her he'll handle the rest, and she notices that his expression has completely changed as he walks over to talk to Tyrius. The next day, Umandra realizes Denosuke still hasn't come out of the room, so she goes to find him, but she sees the room is filled with trash, so she assumes everything fell apart. He greets her, but she scolds him for making such a mess, and she wonders where Tyrius is. Denosuke explains that he's talking to the Demon King now because he agreed to join the demon army, and she's stunned, wondering how Denosuke managed to convince him. He leads her to Tyrius and explains that she just didn't understand him. He tells her about the time he negotiated with a foreign executive who kept refusing everything during their talks. Their talk grew emotional, and the man suddenly reached out to shake his hand. He explains that the man saw his passion, even the arguing, as something positive, saying there are countries where heated discussions carry more value than calm ones. She realizes this is the cognitive gap he had been referring to, and he mentions that Tyrius decided to speak with him right after their eyes met. He adds that minotaurs sleep on straw when they travel, so when she cleared the straw out of Tyrius's room, he was forced to sleep on the floor. So, he was exhausted when she spoke to him, which explains why he was so irritable. She understands that she should have considered his perspective when they were talking. Tyrius then chimes in and tells her that they were both at fault, and he apologizes for being rude earlier. Tyrius thanks Denosuke for helping them with the negotiations, and he leaves the castle as everyone bids him farewell. The Demon King tells Denosuke that he has passed the test, so he is now part of the Big Four. The Demon King asks him to raise his right arm, and he gives him a bracelet, saying it's the mark of office for being one of the Big Four. He tells Denosuke not to be afraid just because he's new, urging him to keep working according to his own thoughts and beliefs. Umandra tells him to raise his arm again, and their bracelets touch. She tells him she's accepted him as one of them, but she adds that she still doesn't see him as a full-fledged member of the Big Four. The very next day, we see Denosuke in his office, looking at the organizational chart and noting that the chain of command is perfect. He thinks about introducing himself to the other members of the Big Four, so he goes to visit Sylphid's room. But his assistant, Belinda, reveals that he hasn't been around for a long while, and she promises to inform him about Denosuke before closing the door. Umandra approaches him, telling him that the Demon King is looking for him because he has a new assignment. So, they head to the Demon King, who orders Denosuke to negotiate with the ogres. He explains that the ogres hold major influence over other demi-humans, and in terms of military power, they're on the same level as the demon army, so the surrounding races look up to them. He sees them as a threat, but he wants them to join the demon army, and he tells Denosuke to handle the negotiations. Umandra decides to accompany him because she wants to keep him safe. After that, Umandra tells Denosuke that they should operate as a team, and he thinks they should visit Genome, since she leads the demi-human units of the demon army. He figures she can help them with the ogres, but Umandra doesn't want to see her, so she says she needs to prepare before they leave. We see Genome training the demi-humans, and she notes that they've improved, so she tells them they're doing well. She asks Denosuke what he needs, so he tells her he's looking for information about the ogres. She realizes his next mission is to negotiate with them, and she says their leader, Ogre, is notoriously difficult to deal with, and his enemies have labeled him a dictator. But she tells Denosuke that her subordinates can't relax, because there's a murderous demon standing behind him. He realizes she's talking about Umandra, and he asks why she's here, so Umandra explains that she came to pick him up since he was taking forever. Genome tells him to go with her, but Umandra gets irritated, wondering why Genome isn't showing her any respect. The scene then cut to a fortress gate where we see Denosuke and Umandra waiting outside the ogre's castle, and Umandra asks the guards how long they'll have to wait, so the guards say they're still waiting for their chief to grant them entry. A girl apologizes for the delay, and she tells them to follow her, saying they've now been given permission to come in. She leads them to Ogre. On the way, Umandra warns Denosuke to not mess this up. They reach the chief's chamber, and we get a glimpse of Red Angry Ogre Chieftain. Umandra greets him, but he tells her to stay quiet, saying she isn't allowed to speak without his approval. He asks if they want to join his army, telling them he'll welcome them if they bring him the Demon King's head. Umandra becomes furious, but Denosuke stops her, and he tells Ogre they need time to think about his offer. After they leave, Umandra says she wants to kill Ogre because he has no respect for the Demon King. But Denosuke tells her to calm down because he knows Ogre is trying to provoke her, so she'll do something he can use as an excuse to reject them. Denosuke explains that Red Geezer has no intention of forming an alliance with them, but he also doesn't want to start a war, so Ogre is trying to push them into reacting, so he'll have a reason to turn against the demon army. She admits she's furious because he insulted them, and Denosuke says he's also upset, but he's holding himself back because he knows it could cause a disaster, saying the ogres might band with the other nations to fight the demon army. He explains that it's fine to retreat during negotiations, and she realizes he has a point, so she apologizes for losing her temper, but he tells her that she actually helped him control his own. She wonders what they should do next, but the girl suddenly appears, revealing that she's Ogre's daughter, Ololulu. We will call her Oral, because I bet she's the best at it. She wants them to remove her father from the throne. She brings them to the castle's food stores, and she reveals that the ogres are going through financial hardship, so everyone is struggling to eat. Denosuke says it's exactly what he suspected, noting that the guard's armor was poorly kept and the hallway was cold and dim. He says this is what happens to large companies that rely too heavily on their leader, because once that leader falls behind, the entire company struggles to recover. Oral thinks the only way for the ogres to rebuild is to join the demon army, but she knows her father won't listen, and she reveals that the Red Geezer has one foot in grave, and he doesn't want anyone to know, so he's pretending to be strong, but he's nowhere near as powerful as before. She knows chaos will break out if he dies, so they need to act, but Denosuke tells her she shouldn't reveal her father's condition to them, babbling some corporate nonsense, and she is so impressed that she wants to give him Oral immediately. She asks him to marry her so he can become the leader of the ogres, saying it's the only way to save them. Denosuke is speechless, but she keeps on pushing him for it. She is ready to get on with it, but Umandra stops her, saying they need time to think. That night, we see Denosuke in his office, thinking about different positions his virgin ass always wanted to try, and wondering what he should do next. He goes domain expansion and imagines himself back at the bar again, and he sees Umandra speaking to the bartender, telling him that a lion is stronger than a gorilla. She mentions that a group of lions is called a pride, so Denosuke thinks back on her words, pride, group, and an idea comes to him. The next morning, Umandra asks whether he has a plan, and he explains that he does, so she assumes they need to speak with Ogre again, but he tells her they should head somewhere else first, saying Ogre will want to negotiate with them once they're finished. He tells her they need to persuade the nearby tribes to join them, saying the demi-humans are also dealing with shortages because they relied on the ogres for their food. He says they should focus on the tribes surrounding the ogre territory, telling her it's part of his strategy. A week later, Ogre summons them, and he demands to know why the surrounding tribes have aligned themselves with the demon army. We learn that Denosuke used this tactic before when dealing with large companies that weren't interested in his products. He would sell to the smaller businesses nearby, forcing the large company to buy as well, since they couldn't stand seeing the smaller ones using newer products. He realizes the plan worked again, and he tells Ogre that the tribes had their own problems, so they chose to join the demon army since it gave them more stability. Oral appears, and Denosuke explains that she helped them convince the tribes to side with them. She says the demi-humans are suffering, and joining the demon army is the only way to protect them. Ogre rejects the idea, but she reminds him that times have changed, telling him he isn't as powerful as he once was. So he needs to cooperate with the other tribes, and Denosuke asks whether he's willing to form an alliance with the demon army, meaning both the ogre tribe and demon army will be equals. Denosuke knows it doesn't affect much, because the other races keep their sovereignty even after joining the Dark Army, yet Ogre is too proud, so the difference in name matters to him. He tells Denosuke he'll think about it, and everyone thanks him for hearing them out, as he realizes things have changed. Since his daughter has learned how to negotiate, he is proud of her. A few days later, Umandra tells Denosuke that Ogre has accepted the alliance, but she notices that he's busy, and he reveals that the Demon King has ordered him to choose his top aide. But he doesn't know whom to pick, and he tells her he wants her as his partner, making her flustered. But Oral walks in, revealing that she's been sent as the official emissary of the ogres. She thanks him for helping her tribe, saying she's willing to do anything for him. He thinks to himself, anything? With a tone so suspicious, it feels like the next episode's about to air on one of those websites. But he controls himself, tells her he's searching for a top aide, and wants her by his side, and she agrees to take the position. But Umandra gets jealous, telling him that Oral is now her rival, and she declares that she won't help him again. Later, Oral visits Denosuke in his office, telling him that negotiations with the Bear Men tribe succeeded. She mentions an award ceremony where he'll be recognized for helping the demon army expand, and he notes that he's never received an award before, so he's excited for it. Umandra also visits him, bringing him gimporage, the staple demon food, but he realizes it tastes bland, and he says he wants to eat meat instead. So, she decides to go hunting with him, and she says they've just received a request to exterminate a magical beast that has eaten 5 orcs. She explains that the orcs can't defeat it because it's too strong, so they're asking the demon army for help. She sees mushrooms nearby, and she tells Denosuke that the orcs were attacked while trying to gather them. The beast suddenly appears behind them, so he panics, but she tells him she'll handle it. She lands a brutal kick, but it immediately recovers, and it charges forward. So she dodges its strike and begins pummeling it, but Denosuke notes that she lacks killing power, thinking she needs a weapon to bring it down. But she decides to go all out, and her gauntlet transforms as she explains that it'll take her some time to recover after using her magic, but she believes it's the only way to kill the beast. It lunges at her, but she grabs its tusks and twists its entire body, killing it instantly. They show its remains to the orcs, and Ulmandra tells them they should eat it, and they start celebrating while Denosuke thinks to himself, "What in the cannibalism bullshit is this?" One of them hands Ulmandra a leg. Denosuke asks if she can cook it, so she says she can, and she'll grill it over the fire. He thinks she's about to prepare a delicious steak, but she simply torches it with her flames, and she tells him the charred steak is ready. He mentions that she burned the meat, but she tells him to eat it, and he realizes that this tastes like how he imagines diesel to taste like. He spots a communal oven, but she tells him it's expensive, and she mentions that salt is considered rare, so they only have a limited amount. But he says it's enough, and he uses the oven to cook the meat properly. He announces that the food is ready, and everyone tries it, finding it delicious. He offers to teach them how to make it, and Ulmandra tells him he's lowering the status of the Big Four, but he explains that you can gauge a civilization's development by observing their eating habits, saying he can tell the orcs lack resources since they don't even know how to cook meat. She agrees, saying the country is weaker compared to the surrounding nations, and she tells him they need to create change as members of the Big Four. Later that day, they start heading back, and Ulmandra forms a fireball, saying she'll use it to light the path and keep wild animals away. She mentions that demi-humans can't use magic, and Denosuke wonders whether Sylphid is a demon or a demi-human. So she explains that she isn't sure, because he never shows up to meetings, but she thinks he's a demon because he can use magic. She leads the way, but Denosuke brings up her fight with the magical beast, saying she struggled because she lacked proper equipment. He knows she needs time to recover whenever she uses magic, so he says she should use a weapon, and he suggests wearing armor instead of light clothes. But she gets offended, saying she finds his comments insulting, and she tells him to wait for the orcs to escort him back. She says his obsession with efficiency doesn't align with demon values, and she leaps away, leaving him wondering why she's upset. He thinks about running after her, but he hears wild beasts moving in the forest, so he rushes back to the orc village. The next day, Denosuke reports to the Demon King, who questions why he didn't return with Ulmandra. He thinks he doesn't deserve a place among the Big Four because of his dispute with her, but the Demon King orders him to make peace with her, saying it might broaden his understanding of the world. After that, Denosuke keeps wondering why Ulmandra is upset, and he notices that the city is full of demi-humans and demons. He watches the people around him, but he's puzzled about why demons dress in such revealing outfits, and he remembers that they're the only ones capable of using magic. He decides to look into it, and he learns that a well-built body is considered a mark of pride among them because they must train their bodies to strengthen their magic. They wear exposing clothes because they want to show off their magical strength, so he realizes she was offended when he suggested she wear armor since he was basically telling her to cover herself up. Meanwhile, we see Oral chopping wood when Ulmandra runs over to her, asking what she should do, because Denosuke didn't compliment her physique, so she assumes he dislikes her. But Oral reminds her that he's nothing like them, so he probably thinks she's a pervert because of her outfit. She wonders how she can fix things with him, but Oral simply tells her not to worry, because he's a kind guy. We see Denosuke back at the bar enjoying the food, telling the bartender it tastes great. The bartender mentions it's his specialty, and as Denosuke sees his cheerful expression, he figures out what he needs to do. He rushes out to find Ulmandra and tells her she has an incredible figure, while she admits that she'd always wanted him to praise her body. But things suddenly get awkward, and he apologizes for upsetting her, though she insists that she should be the one apologizing for leaving him behind in the forest. He then says that he wants her to be his partner, and she gets flustered, thinking he's confessing to her, though we find out he only means that he wants to keep working alongside her. At the awarding ceremony, the Demon King praises Denosuke for successfully negotiating with the other races, and he gives him a magic stone as a reward. But Denosuke says he couldn't have done it without Ulmandra, so he wants her to have it. Yet she's stunned by this, because she thinks he's proposing to her, so she scolds him for doing it in front of everyone. But we see Belinda observing them, and she realizes the demons have finally accepted Denosuke. The Demon King summons Denosuke again, and he assumes he messed something up, so he instantly apologizes and says he'll do anything to fix it. But the Demon King assures him he's performing wonderfully, and though that comforts him, he still wonders why he was called. The Demon King then orders him to find a way for everyone to use magic, because he doesn't want the demi-humans to feel inferior to demons. But Denosuke says he doesn't know how to use magic himself, so the Demon King gives him an unpolished magic stone, telling him it should help with the task. The king also mentions that he'll be working with Sylphid, and he explains that he has already made arrangements with him, though he warns Denosuke that Sylphid can be troublesome. We see Umandra watching Denosuke leave the throne room, thinking his work is progressing well, and she assumes he gave her the magic stone because he wants to marry her. Denosuke examines the magic stones, realizing that they contain demon powers that can be applied in different ways. Oral brings him tea, and he asks if demi-humans can use the stones. She explains that they can, but they still need magical knowledge to cast spells, and he considers asking Sylphid to teach him about magic. He heads to Sylphid's room, but finds Belinda there instead, who tells him Sylphid isn't present. She starts shutting the door, but he asks if he can speak with her, and we see Umandra watching as they step inside, making her jealous. Denosuke asks Belinda if she is Sylphid, and she tries to deny it, but he points out that demons admire a strong body, so they usually don't wear glasses. He also notes that her name isn't listed anywhere in the demon army, and he mentions that the Demon King told him Sylphid avoids responsibilities by pretending to be someone else. So she admits that she is Sylphid, and he asks why she disguises herself as a puppet, and she explains that she hides her identity because people won't stop assigning her work. He wants to discuss magic artifacts with her, but she reveals she invented one long ago. She shows him the device she made, explaining that the base is crafted from a special mineral that lets magic pass through it, and it has multiple magic stones attached so the user can cast different forms of magic. He finds it incredible and tells her to mass produce it, but she reveals that it costs 10 million and he's shocked at how pricey it is. She explains that magic stones are rare, and her artifact uses the highest grade ones, making it absurdly expensive. She tells him they would need an enormous budget to mass produce it, so she advises him to forget the idea, but he suggests redesigning it so that the user can only cast one type of magic. She realizes that would drastically lower the cost, since they could use lower grade stones. He gives her the stone the Demon King gave him, telling her to use it for testing the concept, and she decides to start working on it. But she says she'll need to pull an all-nighter and tells him to help her. She drags him into her lab, and we see Umandra outside the door, noticing how late it is and wondering what they're doing inside. She tries to open it, but realizes it's locked, so she yells for them to let her in. The next day, we see Denosuke completely worn out, while Sylphid is thrilled because they managed to finish the artifact. She calls it the rosemary, and notes that it's cheaper than her prototype, meaning they can mass produce it. She wants to test it immediately, but he tells her he needs rest, so she gives him an hour break. He starts leaving the room, but Umandra suddenly barges in, demanding to know why he spent the night there. She sees him collapsed on the floor and worries he's hurt, but Sylphid tells her to keep quiet. Umandra asks her about Belinda, but Sylphid pretends not to know who that is, and Oral arrives with the demon Lilim, telling Umandra they need her help protecting the villagers because Osiato birds are attacking. Sylphid says it's the perfect chance to test the rosemary, so they head to an open field, where she tells Denosuke to try casting a spell. He wonders if it's safe to use, but she tells him not to worry, since he'll only lose his arm if it malfunctions, which makes him nervous about trying it. She teaches him how to use it, telling him to picture the stone as an extension of himself and let its magic circulate through his body. He manages to summon a fireball, and when they see the Osiato birds approaching, she tells him to burn them down. He throws his fireball and hits one of them, but she urges him to keep going, so he continues blasting them with flames. But the rosemary suddenly reaches its limit, and one of the birds swoops in to attack him, so she uses her wind magic to shield him. He tries activating it again, and it emits a sharp, piercing sound that startles the birds. But he realizes it's no longer functioning, and the birds rush forward, so she uses her wind magic to blow them back. She notices that the magic stone was burned out, so she thinks they need to swap out the low-grade stones, telling him the experiment failed. That evening, they eat the Osiato birds with the demi-humans, and Denosuke realizes that they aren't strong enough to defend themselves. Sylphid adds that they live in poverty, but they're kind people, and she reveals she was born into an elven merchant family, but left when her family fell into trouble. The demi-humans helped her survive while she wandered outside, and she wanted to repay them, because they couldn't use magic, so she set out to create the artifact. But she got tied up with work, so she stopped developing it, and she tells Denosuke she wants their project to succeed because she wants to support the demi-humans. She points out that the Osiato birds will return, but she wonders how he can stop them with only low-grade stones. Denosuke imagines himself back in the bar, watching Umandra eat, noting that what she's eating tastes great, but it used to be discarded easily because it was so fragile. But it became popular once people learned how to prepare it. Then he realizes he just needs to use the rosemary differently. He tells Sylphid to make 10 rosemary units by morning, saying she doesn't need to change anything because it's already good enough. The next day, they see the Osiato birds approaching again, but he arranges the rosemaries into a formation, and when he activates them, they give off the piercing noise, scaring the birds away. Denosuke and Sylphid report to the Demon King, explaining that they can use the rosemary to protect the villagers by driving off the monsters. He praises them for inventing it, telling Sylphid to mass produce it and distribute it to the villagers. Afterward, Sylphid thanks Denosuke for helping her reach a breakthrough, and she hands him an artifact she made, saying he can use it to cast fire magic 30 times. He returns to his office, but Umandra suddenly barges in and knocks him over, revealing that Oral told her everything, and now she feels foolish for getting jealous. She thinks he'll never abandon her because he gave her the magic stone, but she asks if he's alright, telling him to wake up. We see Denosuke back in the bar, noticing genome trading stocks, realizing she's an expert. But Umandra tells her to take off her hood inside the shop, and they start bickering, as Denosuke notes that he also needs to drop his work mindset. Denosuke and Umandra head to the market, and he mentions that her outfit is cute, saying she looks different today. We learn that she told Oral he invited her to go with him, so they assumed he was taking her on a date. She considers wearing a revealing outfit to attract him, but Oral says he wouldn't like it, telling her to choose something cute and modest instead. She's relieved she followed Oral's advice, thinking the date will go well, but he tells her they're doing market research, and she's disappointed that they're only there for work. He explains that their goal is to gather information to help accelerate the demon army's development, but he says they should start by walking together like customers. A merchant recognizes him as a member of the Big Four, saying he stands out because of his clothes. He realizes merchants are a great source of information since they hear all the latest news and rumors. The merchant also recognizes Umandra and asks if they're dating, but she explains they're just there to study the market. He shows them the gold goods he's selling and offers a discount if they buy 2 cups, suggesting they can use them as a couple set. Denosuke decides to buy it, and she assumes he'll use it to drink with her, but he says it's just a product sample. They observe everyone in the market and realize that because of the merger policy, there are now shops selling items they've never seen before. But Denosuke points out a food issue, saying the population is growing, making it difficult to feed everyone. He mentions that the price of Gimu has risen, and Umandra reveals that she negotiated with a merchant, but he said he couldn't profit if he lowered the Gimu price. So Denosuke thinks there's also a problem with the wholesaler's pricing, but she doesn't understand what he means. He explains that wholesalers act as trade middlemen, buying Gimu from farmers so stores can sell it. He adds that if wholesalers raise the price, merchants are forced to sell it higher. Umandra thinks they should go after the wholesalers, but he notes that a major business group called the Guild controls them. He tells her to move carefully, because their actions could impact the country, and he mentions that there are several other issues to address, but they must handle them one by one. He says they're done with their market research and asks her what they should do next, reminding her they still have time. She thinks they're finally going on a date, but Genome interrupts them, saying she's there because it's Ria's day. She explains it's an old tradition where people shower their loved ones with presents, but a couple approaches her, begging her to help save their business. They explain that they've been selling a food called Kimosu for years, but sales have been bad, so they plan to quit. But a businessman named Butagarian placed a huge order, so they stayed up late finishing it. But when they tried to deliver it, he backed out after realizing Kimosu has to be eaten within a day. Now their shop is overflowing with Kimosu, and they fear they'll go bankrupt if they can't sell it all. Genome knows that Denosuke is an excellent cook, and she asks if he has any ideas. He tastes the food and mentions that he knows how to save the store. She tells him to handle it, and he points out that they need to sell 300 Kimosu today. He notes that it tastes like a dish from his world called mochi, but it lacks anything distinctive, so he suggests using it to create different recipes. The couple says it used to be popular with the elderly, but they recently stopped buying it, and the younger generation hasn't even heard of it. He proposes splitting up to get things done, instructing the couple to develop a new Kimosu recipe, while Umandra visits other stores to ask for support. Denosuke walks through the market with his drum, telling everyone to enjoy themselves, since it's Rise Day. The elves don't know the story, so he explains the legend. A boy who sold Kimosu fell in love with a beautiful girl, but the king forbade them from meeting because he wanted to marry her. They decided to secretly meet on Rise Day night, eating Kimosu together in hopes of being united one day. Eventually, the god grants their wish, and they enter a world of stars, living happily ever after. Denosuke encourages everyone to share Kimosu with their loved ones, saying their wishes might come true if they do, and the crowd decides to give it a try. We learn he asked Genome about the legend and used it as a marketing tactic, noting that in his world, products sell better during festivals. The couple displays their Kimosu in various colors, and the crowd ends up buying large quantities. Umandra wonders why young people are suddenly interested, since it used to appeal only to the elderly. Denosuke explains that they changed the target audience, noting that the younger generation had never tried Kimosu, so the new recipe piqued their curiosity, making it a potential market hit. Later that day, the couple is astonished. They sold everything and thanks Denosuke for saving their business. He acknowledges Genome's help. As the demi-humans mentioned, she spread the word about the Kimosu. The couple gives him Kimosu as a token of appreciation, and Umandra blushes, wondering if they'll eat it together. He hands her one of the cups he bought, saying it's a thank you gift, but she thinks he's preparing for marriage. She asks what wish he'll make when he eats it, and he says he wishes for the success of their next mission, making her frustrated and telling him to stop thinking about work. Afterwards, he reports to the Demon King, showing him one of the cups and mentions that a neighboring country is selling gold items for profit. He notes that it's a wealthy nation and suggests trading with them, explaining it would strengthen the demon army and help solve the food crisis. However, he says they need to sell something more valuable than gold. The Demon King suggests selling the rosemary. Denosuke hesitates, saying it's a unique technology of the demon army and he fears other nations might copy it. The Demon King reassures him that Sylphid's rare talent makes it hard to replicate, and even if the technology is stolen, the other nations cannot take her skill. He adds that as long as they work together, they can invent new things. But he warns Denosuke about the king of the Land of Gold, noting he's difficult to deal with. Denosuke prepares for his first business trip as a Big Four member, but Umandra cautions him to be careful because the king is unpredictable. She recounts that he once fed a merchant to a crocodile for selling fake goods, making Denosuke nervous. He arrives at the Land of Gold, also called the Rampage Kingdom, and notes that the demon army has been exporting grain as its main trade item. But due to the food shortage, they need new products to sell. He realizes that if his negotiations succeed, the Rampage Kingdom will supply gold steadily, and he feels the future of the demon army depends on him. He enters the throne room and meets the king, introducing himself formally. The king interrupts, claiming he already knows everything about Denosuke, and questions why he didn't greet him after probation. Denosuke immediately apologizes, noting the situation is tense as the king asserts his dominance. He explains his purpose and presents items made of high-quality silver, but the king destroys them with lightning, asking if Denosuke is mocking him. Yet, everything goes according to plan, as Denosuke reveals the rosemary, explaining it can repel monsters. He notes that it was created by the demon army, is not yet available to other countries, and can protect the Rampage Kingdom's miners by scaring away golems. The king challenges him to demonstrate it, summoning his crocodile. Denosuke activates the rosemary, and the crocodile stops, then lunges at the king. He prepares to fire a fireball, but the king strikes it with lightning. He realizes the rosemary works, and the king expresses interest, impressed that Denosuke dared confront him and even tried to burn the crocodile. The king decides to buy the rosemary, asking how many can be produced. Denosuke offers 200 per month, but the king wants delivery in a week and pays upfront, demanding all the demon army's stones. Afterwards, Denosuke tells Sylphid they need to produce 200 sets in a week, but she says it's impossible because mass production has just begun. He reminds her that they already distributed supplies to disaster zones, so production has stabilized, and asks if she's slacking. She promises to fulfill the king's order, but a messenger suddenly arrives, impressed by the rosemary, and requests an additional 100 sets. We see Denosuke in his office as Oral hands him tea, praising him for doing well, but she asks about the price of a rosemary. He tells her it's worth 500,000, and she realizes the Rampage Kingdom is willing to pay 150 million for it, asking how he managed that. He explains he used a psychological trick called the anchor effect, which he learned from his Indian coworkers, where people rely on the first piece of information when judging value. He showed the king the high-quality silverware first, so he would perceive the rosemary as equally expensive. The messenger returns, saying the king wants an additional 100 sets, so Sylphid hires more kids to work like a sheen factory. The first 200 sets are successfully delivered, and the workers celebrate, as everything is going smoothly. Denosuke returns to his office, noting they've completed another 200 sets, so only delivery remains. He knows the rosemary loses its magic power after a month and needs replacement, so he expects the king to continue purchasing it. But Oral suddenly appears, warning that they're in trouble. Every order has been cancelled. The king's messenger explains that he found a merchant selling a similar product for half the price and will place no more orders. And the workers are upset, having already bought large quantities of raw materials. The demi-humans wonder why their new weapons haven't arrived, and their leader reveals the country is in financial trouble, with everyone blaming Denosuke. He wonders what went wrong and realizes the suffering is widespread, so he apologizes to the Demon King, taking responsibility. The Demon King reassures him that everyone makes mistakes, and the key is how they respond afterward, telling Denosuke he's waiting to see his next move. Denosuke thinks about apologizing to everyone, spotting Genome first and quickly saying sorry, but she says it's unnecessary. He also apologizes to Sylphid, who tells him to leave. While walking down the hallway, he is suddenly kidnapped. He manages to escape and immediately apologizes to his captor, thinking he caused trouble. He soon realizes Umandra orchestrated it and invites him to eat together. He understands she's cheering him up and thanks her, while she comments that the atmosphere is perfect. Oral suddenly interrupts, bringing a basket of fruit, and they enjoy the meal together. The girls fall asleep, and he thanks them for spending time with him, feeling lucky to have coworkers like them. Meanwhile, the king of Rampage speaks with the merchant selling the rosemary, who we learn is Buta Garion. The king is impressed by how he can sell the same product for half the price, but doesn't want to reveal his method. Back with Denosuke, he wonders how their product is being sold so cheaply. He imagines himself at the bar again, playing a game with the bartender, and struggles to answer during his turn. Sylphid joins and helps him. She starts playing her guitar, and he enjoys seeing a wanderer perform, but suddenly realizes their products might have leaked from within. He recalls distributing rosemary in disaster zones, but knows the villagers wouldn't sell it. Ulmandra joins him, revealing that the rosemary he distributed was defective. They head to a village recently attacked by monsters, and the villagers ask why the rosemary didn't work. Ulmandra notes similar complaints from other villages, and Denosuke realizes the rosemary he sent there is missing. Checking other burial sites, they find all the rosemary in the village gone. He suspects theft and asks Ulmandra and Oral for a list of villages that reported problems. That evening, Denosuke leads with Ulmandra, who asks why they're going to a village with no complaints. They hide behind a tree, and she thinks they might have an intimate moment, but they see thieves stealing rosemary. Denosuke realizes these thieves are selling it to the Rampage Kingdom. He asks who they work for, but they attack him, and Ulmandra knocks them down. Realizing they can't match her, the thieves flee. She wants to chase them, but Denosuke stops her. Meanwhile, Buta continues delivering rosemary to the King of Rampage, who admires his skill, impressed by how he can mass-produce products so quickly. Buta says he's simply doing his job, fulfilling customer needs. He's known as the Prophet because he became wealthy by buying unknown products and selling them at high prices. When he learned about the rosemary, he knew it would sell, so he tried having his craftsmen replicate it, but they said it was impossible. He then decided to steal rosemary from villages, believing that in business, right and wrong are irrelevant while looking like a total maniac. On his way back to Rampage Kingdom, guards arrest him and take him to the king, who notes that the stones he brought recently are not functioning. The king threatens Buta with magic, asking why he delivered defective products. Denosuke joins, and Buta recognizes him as the most dangerous man in the demon army, having subdued leaders of other races. He reveals that Buta has been stealing rosemary, so replicas were made looking like the real thing, but powerless. We learned Denosuke asked Sylphid to create them and ordered his soldiers to plant them around villages, then questions Buta about the stones. He realizes that everything is over for him, so he starts begging for his life, but the king sentences him to death. A massive crocodile appears and tries to devour him, but Denosuke blasts it with a fireball. The king gets irritated, telling him he has no right to interfere with state matters. But Denosuke explains he only stepped in because of the crocodile, and he asks the king to hear him out. The king tries to intimidate him by summoning his dragons, but Denosuke argues that if Buta dies, the kingdom will collapse. The king demands an explanation, believing Buta is just a merchant with no real importance, but Denosuke brings up the orange powder, the substance the kingdom uses to extract gold from minerals. He explains that Buta is the only one who can acquire it, because the nation that produces orange powder refuses to export it since it's considered incredibly valuable. He reveals that a civil war broke out because of it, and ever since then, they've forbidden other countries from getting any, with Buta being the sole person allowed to trade with them. We learn that after the civil war, the country was devastated and received no aid from other nations. But Buta gave them food and supplies, earning the title of the Grim Reaper's Merchant, since he traded in the midst of a war. The nation feels indebted to him, so they granted him special permission to deal in their goods. Denosuke points out that killing Buta would be a waste, so the king decides to spare him. But he doesn't understand why Denosuke got involved, since Buta and the Rampage Kingdom have nothing to do with him. Denosuke explains that he isn't thinking in terms of profit or loss, saying it's only natural to save someone when he's in a position to help. The king laughs, calling him amusing, but says he needs to sleep. Afterward, Denosuke mentions he's too scared to move loosing all his aura, so Buta helps him up, and they run into Oral with the thieves, who rush over and call Buta their father. Oral reveals Denosuke ordered her to bring them, and we learn he investigated Buta after the Kamos incident. He knows Buta adopted war orphans during his time trading in the war zone, which is one of the reasons Denosuke decided to protect him. Denosuke then asks Buta to help him sell the rosemary. The Demon King summons Denosuke again, and they discuss the rising price of Gim, which is causing the commoners to starve because they can no longer afford it. Denosuke promises to fix the issue, remembering Buta warning about the guild, but he wonders why they're controlling the Gim supply. Ulmandra thinks they're doing it to get insanely rich and suggests beating them up, but Denosuke refuses. He decides to talk directly to the guildmaster, while the Demon King sends her on another mission. We see the guildmaster as his servant informs him that Denosuke wants a meeting, but he thinks it won't be a problem. As Denosuke gets ready, Sylphid approaches him, and he wonders why she isn't wearing her disguise. She tells him to call her Belinda and decides to accompany him, explaining that there are elves in the guild, so her presence will make negotiations easier. They arrive at the guild headquarters, but the master is absent and they wait 4 hours before he finally appears. He introduces himself as Viper Lordpent, but Sylphid immediately recognizes him, and Denosuke realizes they're siblings with a strained relationship. She says he has brought disgrace to their family, and he asks if she's only here to criticize him, but she points out that Denosuke needs to talk. Denosuke tells him he wants to trade for Gim, but Viper claims the supply is low, so he won't sell it unless Denosuke begs. Denosuke instantly kneels, but Viper laughs, saying it was a joke and offers to sell for 50,000 per bag, the current market price. Denosuke can't believe how expensive it is, but Viper tells him to leave if he's not interested, adding that Denosuke should stop acting like a doormat or the world will mock him. After they leave, Sylphid considers burning down the guild headquarters because they made Denosuke look foolish, but he tells her it's fine, since bowing his head doesn't damage his pride as an elite general. She reveals she's from the Lord Pint family, which has had children with demi-humans for generations since elves struggle to reproduce. She explains she's half fairy, while Viper is half nada, and they have different traits because of their bloodlines. Viper was incredibly greedy since he's half nada, stereotyping a whole race. She says he cooperated with others to burn down the elf village and sold the villagers to traffickers. She says that's why she left her home, but Denosuke tells her she shouldn't have confronted Viper before he finished negotiating. As they think about their next move, a girl named Nia approaches them, begging for help because she's being forced to work for the guild. Kid thinks poor people get choices. He stares at her and decides to assist her, partly because she looks cute, but he says they should buy her clothes first. After buying her a dress, she says she wants to escape her awful life, so he promises to save her and asks her to share her story. He realizes she was separated from her parents and forced into labor for the guild with almost no pay, so he asks if she has any useful information. She reveals the guild is spreading a rumor that a calamity is coming, convincing everyone they won't be able to buy food. He realizes the guild is spreading it so they can raise the price of Gim, and she reveals they're stockpiling it to maximize profit. He wonders if anyone in the guild opposes the guildmaster. Sylphid suggests killing Viper in his sleep, but Denosuke says they have to do things fairly, using their authority as members of the demon army. We cut to the guild headquarters, where Denosuke arrives with the others, announcing to Viper that they need to conduct an emergency audit. It turns out Denosuke planned this surprise visit to locate the Gim and transaction books, assuming the guild wouldn't have time to hide the evidence. Viper tells him to proceed, so they head to the warehouse, but it's empty. Denosuke is stunned, then notices skid marks on the floor, realizing the Gim had been moved. Viper arrives with his men, exuding confidence. Denosuke suspects they were tipped off, anticipating the audit. He mocks Denosuke, declaring the plan a failure, and Denosuke acknowledges he's been outsmarted. Returning to his office, he finds nothing suspicious in the ledgers and wonders how the guild managed to cover everything. Sylphid suggests they might have used the Lord Pint family's name for the trade, and Denosuke agrees, realizing that explains why the transactions didn't appear in the books. But she questions how the guild anticipated the surprise audit and proposes there's a traitor leaking information. She knows exactly who it is. We see Viper speaking to Nia, thanking her for revealing Denosuke's plan. Nia asks where he put the Gim, and Viper snaps at her, saying she has no right to question him. He approaches her, and she fears he's going to strike, but he only pats her head, revealing the Gim is on a caravan patrolling the frontier. He explains they used horse-drawn carriages to transport goods, which made hiding the Gim easy, and mentions her parents are helping him, warning her to do her best. She becomes frightened. As Nia wanders the town, she laments being born a low-ranking Lord Pint. In a flashback, we see her enjoying a meal with her parents until Viper suddenly appears, ordering her to replace his secretary. Though her parents try to protect her, she obeys, knowing they cannot defy the main house. She begins working for him, enduring his abuse since she reminds him of Sylphid, and eventually agrees to spy on Denosuke, believing she has no choice. Back in the present, Denosuke walks through town, noticing that everyone is starving. He imagines himself at the bar again, seeing his former co-workers, and they discuss how superiors abuse their positions, inspiring them to climb the corporate ladder and improve the company. Denosuke recalls they were honest workers he enjoyed collaborating with, when Omandra interrupts, asking why he's daydreaming. She reports finishing her mission, showing him a wyvern she defeated, 30 in total. Knowing they attack in groups, she's relieved it was only 30, and as Denosuke listens, he suddenly has an idea he's confident will solve his problem. Nia visits his office, offering to help, while Sylphid wonders what their next move should be since the surprise audit failed. Denosuke reassures her that he has a plan. Oral arrives with Omandra, revealing they cooked all the wyvern meat with a secret recipe. Denosuke explains he intends to address the food shortage by distributing it across all regions. Nia wants to hear more, but Sylphid stops her, sensing she can't be trusted. Later, Nia sneaks into Denosuke's office, finding a document outlining his plan. As she leaves, Sylphid spots her and confronts her, but Nia uses a smoke bomb to escape. She reports to Viper, disclosing Denosuke's distribution plan, saying it will begin the next day. Viper notes that people won't buy overpriced gym unless they're starving, so he intends to thwart Denosuke. He asks Nia where the distribution starts, and she lies, claiming it begins in the suburbs, hoping to mislead him. But she realizes Denosuke isn't a fool. He'll start at Center Street, the most logical location. Viper orders his carriages to return the next morning, expecting hungry customers to buy his gem before Denosuke's food arrives. He tells Nia she's no longer needed and that it's time to punish her for lying. In Denosuke's office, Sylphid warns him to stop the distribution since Viper already knows. She mentions Nia is a spy, but Denosuke reveals he knew this already, having noticed a bruise on her chest when they first met. He deduces that despite being a demon, she covers her body, indicating long-term abuse. Sylphid argues this isn't proof, but Denosuke insists that by looking into her eyes, he saw the same fear his friends once had under abusive superiors. He understands she's doing everything to survive. Cut to Viper, who waits for his carriages to return, hoping to sell all his gem before Denosuke's distribution begins. The next day, a messenger informs him the carriages haven't arrived, and the demon army is already distributing gem to the people. Sylphid arrives, explaining that Butagarian helped import it from neighboring countries. The demon army sold the smoked wyvern in exchange for gem. Viper can't believe they managed it in less than a day, and Sylphid reveals that Denosuke planned everything in advance, meaning he never had a chance. Viper mocks Sylphid, calling her a fool, insisting she can't stop him. He flees while his ninjas attack her with spells. She dodges, noting they combine magic and martial arts, and decides to test the sword she's been developing. Its rosemary absorbs their magic, letting her deflect their attacks. She then summons firebolts with the sword, striking one ninja, though she knows there's room for improvement. Viper surveys his losses, which are enormous, but he remains confident he can recover as the guild leader. That confidence shatters when he sees Denosuke with the other merchants. They inform him that he's no longer guild leader, as most members voted him out. He refuses to accept it, demanding signed votes. Denosuke reveals that everyone agreed to participate in a signed vote after listening to Nia, whom he had freed from the dungeon. She exposed her bruises, showing Viper's abuse, convincing the merchants of his cruelty. Viper threatens Nia's parents, but she promises to protect them herself. Denosuke declares Viper is forbidden from trading in the country. Viper begs, but it's a performance. Denosuke sees through his arrogance and orders his arrest. Viper resists and tries to attack, but Sylphid stops him, signaling his defeat. As the Epstein of demi-humans is taken away, he insists he didn't lie to the people, warning of the disaster that might come. Nia apologizes for betraying Denosuke and expects punishment, but he merely invites her to the castle, knowing she'll serve as his secretary under a deal with her parents. Basically the same deal Viper made, minus the beatings. It's revealed that Viper's delayed gem delivery was sabotaged by her father, proving Denosuke's strategy to protect her and secure the demon army's interests. He asks her to help reform the guild, and she pledges to do her best. Denosuke introduces her to Oral, and Nia eagerly anticipates working with her. He drifts into a daydream at the bar, seeing friends doing well, until he's abruptly awakened. Nia and Oral inform him that the Demon King wants to meet him due to an emergency. An army of dragons is approaching the country. Ulmandra reports that wyverns are attacking the city in growing numbers, prompting the Demon King to order a full army response. The Big Four are deployed, Sylphid patrols, while the others repel the invasion. The group arrives at the Demon Fort, a complex of 3 fortresses along the borders. The wyverns focus on the Fortress of Despair, so the team heads there, meeting Yanomi. She praises Denosuke as a hero, while Ulmandra dismisses him as weak, sparking an argument. The bell rings, signaling the wyvern attack. Genome orders Denosuke and the others to observe. Demons fire fireballs but miss, while demi-humans' arrows are shrugged off. Tensions rise as demons and demi-humans bicker. Ulmandra intervenes, blasting a wyvern with flames and striking it down. Denosuke watches, and another wyvern attacks from behind, but Genome shoots its eye and decapitates it. She instructs the demi-humans to aim for the eyes, and Ulmandra coordinates the demons. Following the plan, the wyverns are defeated, though everyone is exhausted. Oral and Nia tend to wounded soldiers, Ulmandra eats with the demons, and Denosuke feeds Genome. Genome asks his thoughts on the fortress situation. He predicts its fall due to internal conflict among the troops. He identifies 3 reasons. Tactics, demons excel individually. Demi-humans in teamwork, logistics, insufficient food. Demons consume more for magic energy, and racial discord, decades of tension between demons and demi-humans. Genome agrees, but asks for a solution. He shows her the map, suggesting an abandoned village for housing, while he works to unite the troops. Genome encourages him to take command, arguing his neutral status and achievements will earn respect. He hesitates, doubting their acceptance, but she reassures him that with stagecraft and appearances, they can follow his lead. The troops gather at the gate, where Genome formally announces Zoran Mamdani as their new commander. The troops cheer Denosuke, recognizing him as a hero and believing he can lead them to victory. He urges them to fight together to save the fortress, confident that their coordinated strategy will succeed. Inspired, everyone listens as he lays out the battle plan. The wyverns arrive, but the demi-humans fire on them, and Denosuke rings the bell to signal Ulmandra to lead the demons from the abandoned village. They intercept the wyverns before they can strike the demi-humans, blasting them to the ground. Victory comes without casualties, and the soldiers praise Denosuke's plan. That evening, Denosuke tells Genome they need to consolidate supplies at the base and distribute them according to each fortress's needs. She calls him a hero, and he protests, blushing slightly. Umandra teases him about it, but lets it slide, acknowledging the wyvern's defeat so the soldiers can return home. She mentions that the Demon King wants her to report to him and thanks Denosuke, saying his speech inspired her. Oral and Nia interrupt, reporting a massive wave of wyverns attacking the other two fortresses, now moving toward the Demon King's castle. They rush there and find Umandra fighting alone. She blasts them with flames, but one wyvern pushes her back. Determined to be a hero like Denosuke, she strikes it down in a single blow, but collapses from exhaustion, having drained most of her magic. Nia tends to her, while Denosuke thanks Umandra for protecting the castle and promises to eliminate the wyverns. Oral informs him that the wyverns attacked multiple villages, including her hometown, injuring her friends. Denosuke tells her to return home with adequate guards. He studies the wyvern's behavior but grows exhausted from sleep deprivation. Despite this, he pushes on, thinking only he can devise an effective strategy. In a daydream, he sees the Demon King advising him to rest, and Denosuke finally sleeps, realizing the king's wisdom. The next day, he feels refreshed and resumes planning. Meeting with Genome, he notes that the army's combat power is weakened because Umandra cannot fight. He explains that the wyverns specifically target women with high magic. Denosuke rallies the soldiers for the final battle, explaining they will use female demons as bait to lure the wyverns, and honestly, even I would fall for that. Many hesitate, fearing failure, but Denosuke admits he isn't a hero or a member of the Big Four. He reminds them that no one will save their country for them. They are the only protectors of their families. Motivated by his words, the troops commit to his plan. Despite hundreds of lives at risk, Denosuke worries about potential failure. Genome hugs him, offering comfort, reminding him he must remain strong for the army. When the wyverns attack, demi-humans fire at them, but the beasts target the female demons. Male demons shield them, while Genome cuts through the wyverns, and Denosuke coordinates the battlefield, summoning fireballs using Sylphid's artifact. The wyverns are defeated, seemingly ending the threat until a strange light heralds the arrival of a massive dragon. The dragon begins destroying the fortress, targeting Denosuke. Umandra arrives to protect him, despite her depleted magic, recalling Denosuke's lessons on efficient thinking. Using her limited power to maximum effect, she destroys the dragon's arm. Genome decapitates the other arm, and Sylphid joins, inspired by Denosuke's speech. They combine their powers to neutralize the dragon's fire breath, finally defeating it in a fiery explosion. Umandra collapses, exhausted, instructing Denosuke to ring the bell of victory. Suddenly, an earthquake shakes the fortress. A mountain is moving. It reveals itself as a colossal calamity monster. Denosuke doubts their ability to defeat it, but the Giga Chad Demon King arrives, stepping in to confront the threat. The monster fires a devastating energy beam, and the king summons his barrier to protect everyone. The Demon King unleashes his ultimate death spell, forming a colossal orb of darkness that crashes into the calamity monster. The resulting shockwave obliterates it, and its body vanishes. Denosuke can't help but think the Demon King is OP, but the king tells him to announce the victory. Denosuke proclaims their triumph, and everyone celebrates. Genome invites him to join the demi-humans, but Umandra refuses, even playfully choking him to keep him from leaving. The Demon King summons the Big Four to reward them for managing the disaster and praises Denosuke for his efforts, requesting a private conversation. Denosuke vows to continue serving him, but the king asks what it means to be a ruler. Denosuke struggles to answer, thinking a king simply leads the country, and the king challenges him further, suggesting that Denosuke should be the next king. Panic fills him, he doubts his abilities. The Demon King reassures him, noting Denosuke's past achievements and talent, but acknowledges that something inside him is holding him back. Denosuke reflects on the emotional scars left by his former superiors, doubting his capacity to protect the country. Meanwhile, the Demon King considers the state of leadership, how people crave power, leading to suffering under tyrants or incompetent rulers. His goal is to erase such kings, believing Denosuke has what it takes despite his self-doubt. Denosuke wrestles with cowardice and risk, remembering the Demon King once offered to return him to his old life. He decides to resign, preparing to hand over his duties to Oral. A letter from the Kamosa store owners reminds him of the good he's done. They thank him and invite him to visit. But he knows he must move forward, recalling how painful farewells abroad once were. As he writes his resignation, he imagines the bar again, realizing he'll leave the Big Four. Memories flood back, the amazing people he worked with, the best boss he ever had, the perfect workplace, yet he feels unworthy. The bartender offers him a free meal, explaining the bar is closing, leaving Denosuke uncertain about his next steps. He decides to say goodbye properly. Talking to Genome, he sees her working to unite demi-humans and demons through training. She admits uncertainty about leading both groups but affirms she isn't afraid of change and still needs his guidance. Denosuke tells her he has something important to say, but she walks away, assuring him she'll always be there. He visits Sylphid, who has formed a team to improve gim production and resolve the food shortage. She confesses that she once doubted her abilities, but now acts to help those who once helped her. She thanks Denosuke for inspiring her to change and advises him to trust his heart. Denosuke contemplates her words. Ulmandra suddenly appears, reminding him that they are partners and that she will always stand by him. She urges him to have confidence in himself. Overcome with emotion, Denosuke cries, grateful for her support. Finally, Denosuke resolves to accept the throne. He explains to the Demon King that he was inspired by the people around him to stop limiting himself. Though he admits he isn't as powerful as the king, he vows to lead differently, aiming to become a ruler who doesn't rely on force to achieve his goals. Acknowledging that he still has much to learn, he promises to do his best, and the Demon King pledges to guide him toward becoming the greatest leader the world has ever seen. The video ends with a message encouraging viewers to like and subscribe, leaving Denosuke's journey poised for the next chapter.